Oh my goodness. Thank you, Christy. Thank you for that. I am really glad to be here. As you'll learn in a few minutes, I'm really glad to be anywhere. Very lucky to be alive at all, but so are you. And I'm going to try to give you several reasons that's the case. I want to start off by telling you about something that happened to me about 15 years ago. I was in Germany, in a little town in the Rhine Valley called Assmannshausen. I was actually taking some college students through Germany. And we stopped in this little village. And it's a wine-growing village, and it was January, so the town was almost entirely abandoned. There were just a few people there. So it was terrific. We got to walk through this medieval town that was, almost empty. It was great. And at one point, I was just with a few students, with about 3 students, walking down this alley, this very narrow, tall-walled alley, and winding our way through the town. And I looked down at the end, and there was an arm, a wooden arm down blocking the end of the alley. This red and white striped wooden arm. It's a very odd thing. And turned to the students and said, what the heck, we needed to get to the other side of this to see the rest of the town. And so I went up to the arm and started to duck under it. And shoo, freight train went by about 18 inches from my head. We had been blocked from the sound of it by the alley walls. Just completely blocked, plus the fact that it was a mile away 5 seconds earlier, so we didn't hear anything. And I held on to the wooden arm, because the suction, was still trying to kill me, and then it was gone just as fast as it had come. And we just sort of stared at each other in recognition of what had almost happened. If I had been about a second quicker going under this arm, just ducking under the arm, what is it, a train that's going to go by? We're in the middle of a town. It was a completely non-American scenario. I just didn't, that was the last thing that occurred to me. And I almost died. I could very easily have died. And I recognized that I didn't die because I was lucky. That was it. Wasn't protected by anything supernatural or anything. I could very, very easily have, that could have been it. And that changed me for a while, because I am like most people, and eventually you forget the transformative experiences that you have. But for a while, it really changed me. It made me really feel like every day was a gift. Like I really shouldn't. I could just as easily not be here as be here. But the fact is, it shouldn't have changed me. It shouldn't have had that impact, because I had already almost been hit by a train many, many times in my life. And so have you. And that's what I want to talk about today, is the number of times that you have almost been hit by a train. First one I want to talk about happened about 70,000 years ago. You may not remember that train. But our species was having a tough time around then. We were having a series of ice ages, and so a lot of the moisture on the planet was locked up in the poles periodically, and that turned the temperate zones very arid, very dry, very difficult to live. And we were in what is now Africa, and it was a hard time. And as a result, the human population around that time was somewhere between 24 and 26,000 people on the planet, is the estimate around that time, the Paleolithic era. This is very, very difficult time. And then it got worse. Right around 70,000 years ago, what is now Lake Toba in Indonesia was at that time the caldera of a supervolcano, and it blew, and it covered the atmosphere all around the planet in ash for about 10 years. It was volcanic winter for about 10 years in the upper Paleolithic. And the human population dropped to an estimated 5,000 individuals on the planet, by some estimates. Some estimates say 3,000, some say 2,000 left on the planet. That was almost it for you, okay? Right there in that genetic bottleneck that we reached, that was almost the end of the species. Why was it not the end of the species? Luck, right? I mean, it could just as easily have been it. But we made it through that bottleneck, and as a result of that, you are here. Okay? You were almost hit by a train, and so was I. And we should think about that all the time, the fact that that could have been it before our own game even started. Number 2, during this period of time, during the Paleolithic, we developed a lot of evolutionary strategies that ended up really helping us survive during that time. We lived in small bands of between 8 and 12 people is the typical estimate, on the savanna, widely spaced, so there'll be, you know, a group in the next valley or in the next region, and then, you know, we're way over here. And if someone from far away comes into your region, if another band of 8 to 12 people comes into your region, the very best thing to do evolutionarily is kill them. Because they had just brought a whole bunch of mouths to feed into your region without increasing the region's resources at all. So evolutionarily, hating, fearing, killing someone who is different from you, someone who's over there, someone who acts differently, looks differently from you, was actually evolutionarily advantageous in the Paleolithic. Fast forward to today, when we have 7 billion people living cheek and jowl who are different from each other, and we still have the evolutionary tendency to fear people who are different from us, to hate people who are different from us. It's no longer at all advantageous to do this. Now, sprinkle 300 million guns through the country at the same time, put nuclear weapons in the hands of the leaders of the countries around the world, and everything should be a smoking heap, right? Because of what we are, because of human nature that grew up in the Paleolithic. We really should have wiped ourselves out long ago. Why haven't we? Luck. Right? Cuban Missile Crisis is just one example. But all along the way, there are all these opportunities we had to really do ourselves in. And we didn't. We were almost hit by a train. The train being our own nature. And we haven't wiped ourselves out yet. That is fabulous. That's worth a cake. You know? Just that by itself. Number 3. The Earth is orbiting the sun. And millions and millions of things cross our path all the time as we orbit. Most of those things are small enough that when they cross our paths, it just puts on a nice light show in the sky, right? But an estimated 3,600 of these things are large enough that if they hit us, we're going to wish they hadn't. But not for very long. We'll wish for a very short time that they hadn't, and then that will be it. These are civilization-ending asteroids that cross our path, our orbit on a regular basis, okay? They haven't hit us recently. Any of these things haven't hit us since there have been human beings on the planet, since there have been hominids. We haven't had one of these big ones hit us. Why not? Luck, right? It's luck. And that's an absolutely fabulous thing to realize. We could be gone already because of one of these civilization-ending asteroids, and we're not. Now, is it going to happen tomorrow? It actually could, right? It could happen a year from now. It could happen 100 years from now. I heard an interview with an astronomer who said something that I've never forgotten, and you won't either when I tell you, because this guy was asked, of these 3,600 civilization-ending asteroids that cross our paths, what are the odds of one of them hitting us, actually hitting the Earth? And he said, let me rephrase that for you. The odds of every single one of them hitting the Earth eventually are about 100%. Okay? So this is going to happen a lot. But maybe not tomorrow. The nice thing is, it didn't happen yesterday. We have over and over and over again, there are lots of trains, out there, and we continue to be lucky. That's something to actually celebrate. That's something to think about and think, we could be gone for so many different reasons, and we're not. That's something to celebrate. Number 4. In your chest is a pump made of meat. About the size of my fist. And approximately once per second, it expands and contracts and pushes a thick fluid through your body that you need to live. And it pushes it through 60,000 miles, in the average person, 60,000 miles of tubing, of soft tubing, right? And the fact is, most of those tubes are really small, little capillaries and that sort of thing, and if one of them breaks, you'll be fine. You're not even going to notice, right? But there's an estimated 200 miles of tubing in your body that if it breaks, it's big enough that you're going to wish it hadn't. Okay? But again, not for very long. But the good news is, this hasn't happened. Your heart is beating, and your heart keeps beating. I don't know why it does. I don't know, but it keeps going. And every once in a while I lay awake at night and I think about it, and it beats again, and it beats again, and I think, please keep doing that, right? And I think about the 200 miles of tubing that I've never really looked at, never really checked, you know, never kicked the tires on the 200 miles of tubing, but it seems to keep holding up, right? So there are two different ways to go with all of these things, right? You can look at it and you can just be seized with terror that all these things, all these swords of Damocles are hanging over our head. But you can look at it another way and say, we are incredibly lucky. Look at how lucky we are that my heart keeps beating, and that the asteroid hasn't hit, and that the total volcano didn't wipe the species off the planet. We've had an incredible run of luck. It's spectacular. But the biggest one is number 5. The biggest one is the fact that each and every single one of you has won the biggest cosmic lottery imaginable in simply being here. And I've talked to my son about this. I've talked to all my kids about this, but I remember specifically a conversation I had with my son. He's 19 now. He was about 10 at the time, 10 or 11, and he needed boxer shorts. So we went to the mall and I got boxer shorts with some locker room norms kind of thing. Yeah, I had to switch to boxers. And so we bought them and we're driving home in the van. And I said, I asked him if he knew that he actually owed his existence in part to boxer shorts. And he said, what? And he had heard, you know, all we had talked about the fact that, you know, gosh, what if your parents hadn't met, you know, you wouldn't have been born, all those sorts of things. And we had messed around with that stuff for years. But boxer shorts was a new one. That's one he'd never heard before. So I said, yeah, when Mom and I were actually trying to conceive you, we actually went several months without success. Trying and no success. And then I was actually waiting for a haircut at Great Clips. And they were helping somebody else, and so I had to wait for a little while. And I saw this Men's Health magazine sitting there on the table, and I picked it up, and I opened it up, and there was an article that said if you're trying to conceive a child and having trouble, try switching to boxer shorts, because, you know, the testicles are held too close to the body, they get too warm, it's too sluggish. And I look in the rearview mirror in his eyes, and he said, what if you didn't see the article? And then he said, what if she finished the haircut 10 minutes earlier? So now he's at the point where he's realizing that his existence as a person on Earth is partly dependent on how long someone took to cut somebody else's hair in 1994. You know? That's the kind of, you know, what if I had gone to get my hair cut on a different day? What if there are all these things that pile up? And of course, there is no end to these things, right? What if his parents hadn't met? Or what if we met but didn't find each other attractive? Or we found each other attractive but we decided not to have kids, right? Or we had kids and we had them in a different month. We had a child in a different month. It would be a different egg. It would be a different person. He would not have been born, right? What if we conceived in the same month, but a different sperm had won the race? He would be a different person. There would be a different person here, not him. Oh, and that's just the parents. You got to go back to the grandparents. Both sets of grandparents, same thing. The right month, right? The exact right month to be him. The right sperm, there are millions of sperm. And it's just, the odds are incredible. Go back to the great-grandparents. Go back and back and back and back to 65 million years ago, when one of those asteroids actually did hit us, right? wiped out. 75% of the life on Earth, everything bigger than a duck, pretty much, died then. But a couple of rats had sex at the right time in order for him to exist. Actually, tens of thousands of couples of rats had to do that at exactly the right time. Go back 180 million years to the Permian extinction, when another asteroid hit us, right? And 90% of all life on Earth was wiped out. Everything bigger than a duck poop, pretty much, was wiped out. And all those acts of procreation had to happen just as they happened for you to be here. That is impossible to wrap your mind around. You simply cannot believe how lucky you are to be here when you start to add up all the things that had to happen. There is an old silent movie, Buster Keaton, I think it was. Goes through the beginning of the movie and he hates his life, he hates his job, but he doesn't have the courage to quit it. He loves a woman, but he doesn't have the courage to ask her to marry him. He's just going through his life like this. And then in one scene, he's waiting on the street corner, waiting for the trolley car to come, and the house behind him explodes, right? Gas leak or something like that, explodes. And the whole wall of the house, you can picture this, the whole wall of the house falls on him. But the second floor window for him, the glass has blown out, and it just exactly goes and falls right around him. And he's standing unscathed with all this destruction around him. And he starts laughing in disbelief, right? Just laughing in disbelief at his incredible luck at being alive. And so what does he do? He goes and he quits his job, and he asks her to marry him, and he seizes his life because he realizes how incredibly lucky he is to be alive. Every one of us should feel that every single day. It changes everything. And one of the things that changes is the whole consideration of death. It's really, really difficult to complain too much about the fact that life eventually ends, when you realize just how completely unlikely it is that it ever began. You know, that's the extraordinary thing, and that's what we really have to keep hold of. We have to keep laughing in disbelief as much as we can. Thanks very much.